NFL owners met virtually on Tuesday. They've been meeting virtually throughout the pandemic, not all the time, but they do their meetings that way. And this is a separate and special one from the normal quarterly get-togethers. And they had a couple of items of business they wanted to take care of. One, a contingency plan that we've been discussing and we've added to some of the reporting. At first, we just kind of dropped out there. Hey, if they lose games, they're going to play a 16-team playoff field. Well, the way it's going to work is, ideally, 17 seasons, or 17 weeks, 17 seasons. 17 weeks, 256 games, get them all in, stick with the current playoff format of 14 teams. If you can't get all the games in 17 weeks, you have your 18th week. If you have any, and what they're saying is meaningful games that can't be played with that 18th week, then that's when you expand the playoffs from 14 to 16. Now, meaningful, I assume if it would have any impact whatsoever on playoff seeding. Now, you could say, well, it's only meaningful if it impacts who gets in or who doesn't get in or who gets the bye. Everything else, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, that's not meaningful. I think they should strive to get every game played.
Yes, definitely.
And now, if you play a game between the Jaguars and the Bengals, and both are mathematically eliminated, and there's no way that the outcome of that game can affect any tiebreakers or seeding, then I guess you go ahead and stick with 14. But I just think they should try to get every game played. Period. And then if any games aren't played, then you make a good faith, fair assessment of whether or not you should expand the playoffs to 16. If it has any impact whatsoever, though, I think you should.
Yeah, I mean, I would think so too, right? Like that would be the first thing I or at least thought of, and with that scenario, okay, well, seeding has to be a part of that conversation, right? I mean, it has to be. If there was a big game between just two top-tier football teams, and let's just say we could go to the AFC. Let's say the Steelers and Chiefs are tied, same record, right? And I know that's not going to happen because they're going to play each other at some point, and that's going to be a tiebreaker. But you know what I mean.
Steelers and Chiefs don't play each other this year.
Oh, yeah, you're right. They don't. I don't know what I was thinking. I thought they were. So let's say they end up tying, right? And let's say it comes down to, man, it's going to come down to this tiebreaker, that tiebreaker, whatever it is, and it might be strength of schedule, something like that. Like, I guess what I'm saying is, how far down the line will they go as far as this has meaning for the impact of the seeding? Or is it going to have to have a direct effect, I guess, is
I think any
anything?
Effect whatsoever, they need to get the game played. They need to, and this is the way it's going to work.
Right.
Now, the actual language hasn't been crafted yet. They've just approved going forward with it. But remember, if the meaningful game can't be played, then that's when you expand the postseason to 16 games. I just think if the outcome of that game would have any impact whatsoever, directly or indirectly, on the configuration of the playoff tree, and that game can't be played, then you flip the switch and you go to 16. And look, I think they're going to err on the side, Chris, of going to 16, because if you lose regular season games, you are losing money, and there isn't a direct, bright line connection between not televising these games and losing money from the networks, because it's more complicated. It's a broader relationship. They're currently negotiating new deals. But still, for the NFL, ideally you want to deliver everything you've promised.
Yeah.
If you don't deliver regular season games, you can turn around and deliver 2 extra postseason games that would have value. So I think that the NFL probably is going to be inclined to implement the 16-team contingency plan, if in any doubt whatsoever. Let's go ahead. If we've lost any game, and the way it was told to me last week, if we lose any games at all, we're going to 16.
Right.
Now this meaningful thing has been thrown on top of it, and I don't think anybody really knows what that means.
No, I don't. That's where I bring up to your let's Jaguars and Bengals. Like I said, the game might not have any direct meaning as far as those two teams or anything like that, or anything to get in. But that's what I'm asking. Are they going to play that game if it becomes down to, a strength of schedule, or, now this team won, so this team becomes the 1 seed and this team becomes the 2 seed? And
I think here's the right way to frame it.
Yeah.
I think the goal is going to be to try to play every game in that 18th week if it gets postponed. But if they can't get the game played, I think this is where the question comes in of expanding the playoff field.
Yeah.
If they can't get that Jaguars-Bengals game played, what impact does that have to have on the configuration of the playoff tree in order to activate the 16 games? And I would say any whatsoever.
Yeah.
Strength of victory, strength of schedule, strength of this, strength of that. And it doesn't take many tiebreakers to get into those, because it seems like every year now we're doing one of these crazy calculations of all the different permutations that affect the ultimate seeding. If it has any effect whatsoever and you can't get the game played, go to 16, boom, period, that's it. Now, again, they haven't crafted the actual language, and one of the factors here, and this is an example of a situation where the NFL puts the cart in front of the horse and gets the public behind it, and then it pressures the union to agree. The union doesn't have to agree. The union will take the position that this is a subject of bargaining, that they must come to the union and say, we would like to do this. Let's talk about it. Are you okay with it? Is there something you would want in exchange for it? And it was 5-6 years ago, Chris, where the NFL was careening toward expanding the playoffs from 12 to 14. What happened this year was going to happen 2015, 2016-ish.
Yeah.
And the union said, no. I mean, you may just assume that we're fine with 2 extra playoff games and that we're fine with taking our cut of the extra money that comes from it. You may assume that, but you assume wrong. We still have a voice in this, and they never agreed to it until it was part of the broader negotiation back in February of this year. That's when the 14-team playoff field was implemented. So there is absolutely no way that you can just assume that the union is okay with it. They may not be.
Right.
Now, my understanding is, look, if revenue is going to be lost as a result of not playing regular season games, and this is a way to make it back, the NFLPA is going to be inclined to agree. But I think it would be a mistake to just think the NFL is going to ram this through with no concession whatsoever to the union, because this is how bargaining works. This is something the league wants. Okay, you want it. What are you giving us?
Right.
What are you doing for us? Well, you benefit from it. Well, maybe we do, but we don't have to agree to it, so we have some power here. What are you doing for us to get us to agree to this?
Mike,
there
let me
also
just ask
was
you
a
this.
question.
Do you think they're going to try to look for a reason to expand the playoff format? Like, okay, it's, 2 meaningless games that need to be made up, all right, and have very little implications, if any at all, right? Let's just say if one team won, this team went from the 7th seed to the 6th seed, and the 6th seed went to the 7th seed, all right, where there's not really difference there, right? They're still on the road in the playoff game. Is the NFL going to use that and go, well, I don't like this. We need to have an extra team in the playoff, because they're going to want the extra money in a down year and things like that? That's the other thing that jumped off to my head immediately in reading this. Will they find, and I don't want to say this, but lack for a better way of saying it, an excuse to say 16-team playoff field this year, we had this one game, and everyone might go, well, that one game meant nothing, but they just do it? Do you think that's a possibility?
Well, I think that gets to what I was saying earlier. They're going to err on the side of calling any game meaningful that they possibly can. So, we lost one game. Yeah. We got in 255, not 256. There was one game that, even with the extra week, we couldn't get it played. Oh, well, here we go to 16. And, look, meaningful, it can be
so broad,
defined narrowly and broadly. I mean, look, it's every game is meaningful to the draft standings.
Yeah, that's right.
To the draft order. Right. If they care about that, now they pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. Teams have an incentive to lose games. That would they really want to force in an extra game just to determine whether or not the loser gets a higher spot? But who knows? Maybe that one last game determines the first overall pick in the draft. Is that meaningful? I just think that if they can't get any game in, let's go ahead and activate 16.
Yeah.
And that's that. Unless you can look at it and say, there's no way that it affects anyone strategically for playoffs, for draft status, for anything. But it's all to be determined. It's all to be written. See, they have to take this concept and put it on paper. That's the next step. So the cart is in front of the horse, and there are some issues that need to be ironed out. And hopefully they get them ironed out soon, because Week 10 is upon us tomorrow night when the Titans and the Colts get together. Now, there was at one point a thought that a 16-team playoff field would look like it did back in 1982 when you were, what, 2?
Yes.
Yeah, you were born in August, so you were 2 in 82. I was not. I was 17, which is somewhat depressing considering I'm sitting here talking to a 2-year-old now, which, I guess is kind of fitting based upon some of the things you say.
Thank you.
As Aunt Jeannie could probably confirm in ways that we can't mention on TV, given your vocabulary, which is very colorful at times. So in 1982, when they lost 7 games per team to a strike, they just did a straight 1 through 8, no regard for divisions, top to bottom playoff tree. And there was talk that that's what they would do, that you don't get dibs for being a division winner. You don't get one of the top seeds for being a division winner. You don't get the automatic 4 spot if you are the best of 4 bad teams in the NFC East. They ended up deciding to go ahead and let the division winners have home games. Troy Vincent, the executive VP of football operations with the NFL, spoke with Peter King yesterday. Here's their exchange on that point.
There was a time that there was consideration for not giving the 4 division winners. They would make the playoffs, but not giving them the top 4 seeds. Is that correct?
That is correct. And the thought was if any time you could maybe change up some things in the current environment, why reward a team that frankly may win their division with 5 wins? Why reward them with a home game
against a team that might win 10 or 11?
Correct. And that was a debate, Peter, of the committee for quite some time.
Yeah.
For quite some time.
What eventually turned the tide against it?
I would just say, when you think about the team or the divisions that were tradition, really the best way to answer it is tradition, and not moving away from tradition in a year where we've had a lot of uncertainty. And if we didn't have to do it, why do it?
Is there any way that sanity can prevail in the playoffs and we can please not have potentially a team with 7 or 8 wins in a regular season, a normal regular season, not host a playoff game against a team that might have even 11 or 12 wins?
I think eventually we may get there. I think what we're seeing, which potentially could occur, and we still got a lot of ball to play, but what potentially can occur, I think it lends to that discussion.
Troy's rooting for one of his former teams, the Philadelphia Eagles, to win some games, so that isn't relevant. But look, if we're going to get caught up in tradition, the tradition of the NFL, if you have 8 teams per conference in the playoffs, is to not give the division winners an automatic home game. It's to seed them from scratch. So tradition is a malleable word in this context, and that's the tradition. It's only been done one other time, but that's the tradition. Look, this gets into a different issue that we have been griping about, as the NFC East has been horrible. Every year there's a division that doesn't hold its weight because there's only 4 teams in the division. That's part of the reality of only having 4 teams in a division. And yes, it looks good on paper to have the conferences separated in 4 divisions and 4 teams. It's symmetrical, it's neat, it's tidy, it's geographically accurate for the most part, unlike the days when the Arizona Cardinals were in the NFC East, which was just ridiculous. But there are flaws, and that's the big flaw. But so the bottom line is, whoever, if they don't get all the games in, is in first place in the NFC East is going to be the 4 seed, period, unless one of those teams goes on a tear and ends up with a better record than the Packers or the Saints or the Seahawks, who are currently leading the other 3 divisions. And, the other side of this too, Chris, we talked about this yesterday. After this weekend, every team will have played 9 games, minimum. Right. Some will have 10. In 1982, it was just 9 games. I mean, we are at the top of the 5th. The complete game is there. The question is, how many more games will they get in? And it's not a ridiculous question, even though the NFL currently has played all of its games. As we see, number one, the pandemic continuing to spread, record numbers, 100,000 new cases for 6 straight days, maybe 7 now. I've lost count of that. And we see more and more hotspots popping up. And we're just used to it now. Oh, somebody's on the COVID-19 reserve list, tested positive.
We are.
And then the next day you find out how many guys get knocked out because of it. Yesterday, we'll be talking about this coming up. It was Ben Roethlisberger knocked out because of it. So, and not because he has it, just because he sat next to Vance McDonald on the plane back from Dallas. That's enough to get him knocked out for 5 days. So it just feels like at some point they're going to lose some games. They're going to get some games postponed. They may not be able to make them up. But my point is this. We're already approaching the point where they can feel like, okay, we got
enough
season.
done.
9 games. We got 9. That's
right.
enough done. But, I mean, they were talking about reducing it to 12. We're almost there.
No.
We're just a few weeks away from getting to 12. Everything after that's gravy.
It is. The meat and potatoes are. I mean, you're right. We've made it through. I think, not to say the tough part, but we've at least figured out how to exist here with COVID-19. I know it might get worse and whatever else, but it does seem that teams, when cases arise, they're doing the right things for the most part. They're following protocols. The specific scenario with Vance McDonald, that's one I don't really get in the NFL right now with the common knowledge right now of, you could be not feeling well and not test positive for 2 or 3 days after that. To me, that's one that needs to be remedied there or fixed a little bit. I mean, because they're lucky that, they get away out of a plane flight, a football game, that it doesn't become more of an outbreak that way. But it does seem like coaches, players, for the most part, still are staying on the straight and narrow, have kept that message to their team, their players, everything like that. And just, I feel confident. I do. I'm not saying we get all 256, but I feel like we're going to get very close to accomplishing the full season and feeling good about it and having a legit playoffs and everything like that.
The problem is, and it continues to be, when the players, coaches, and other essential personnel go their separate ways at the end of the day, unless they are in hermetically sealed rooms in their homes and they are exposed to no other human beings, you are going to have the ever-increasing possibility of someone bringing it to the facility. And, Shereen Williams and I talked about this last night on PFTPM. All you have to do is watch a game. No one on the sidelines is behaving as if anyone else has it.
No.
They're behaving under the presumption that no one else has it, that, hey, we're all tested every day. We're fine. We're clear. And I don't know what it's going to take to get the message across to those guys. Just because you're tested every day doesn't mean you don't have it today. Vance McDonald, the latest example of a guy who was all clear, testing negative, gave a sample Sunday morning, went and played the game, came back positive. It can happen at any time. And just watch how they – and let's just set aside, as we're all trying to do now, this ridiculous political argument that masks don't work. The NFL requires the wearing of masks. Doctors have proven that masks help protect you and those around you. Look at what's going on the sidelines. You got so many guys that don't have their noses covered, which you may as well not even have the damn mask on. You've got guys in each other's faces talking loudly. They're trying to win a football game. See, that's where you can't get
hard, right?
The two plates balanced.
No.
We want to win a football game, so this plate of maybe I'm going to get exposed to this virus, that gets forgotten.
Definitely.
Front and center is doing what you have to do to win a football game.
And front and center to what you're saying is, a lot of these guys are going, wait, but it's okay for me out there to be smashing faces with somebody that's good there, but then when I get on the sideline, I have to do this. Why? Just for a message? So I think that's where players.
Well, no, right, but that's why people need to say you're at greater risk of catching it when you're face-to-face on the sideline for 5 minutes, for 10 minutes, and then you come back and you sit next to that guy again after the next drive. It's that prolonged exposure to the person who has it, who is breathing that into your face. The real quick tackle the guy, put him on the ground, get up and go, that's not nearly enough to get you exposed if that guy has it. And I don't know if – see, you need to have full buy-in from all the coaches, and I don't think there's full buy-in from all the coaches.
No,
I think you got plenty of coaches who think it's no big deal, and why are we worried about this? Why are we wasting time on it? and they're not explaining it to their guys the way they should. And also, they're trying to explain to their guys what they need to do to win football
That's the
games.
biggest
You only
thing,
have so
Mike.
many hours in the day
You're right.
to preach to your players. You're going to preach football, not virus.
That's really what it is. You know, these aren't bad people, you know, for the most part. You know a lot of them, I do. They want to be good and do the right thing, and they're not trying to endanger people, but it is their livelihoods, and it's the emotions of the game, and it's a pressure-packed job and everything like that, to where, yeah, they want to, and I'm sure when they got home, they hear it from their kids and their wife, hey, we saw you without your mask on. I mean, I've had a few coaches say that. That's what's really kept them on the straight and narrow, is their family at home going, you look like an idiot, you know? You know, my mom called after the game and texted me and said she saw me a few times without it. You know, that's checking. But yes, it's the emotions. It's, you know, I got to communicate this really fast and really quick, and you need to hear it because I got to go back here and coach, or you need to run out in the field. And that's where, yeah, there's a little disconnect, let alone that we know there's just not people in the league, as far as players, coaches, that really fear it, like we've always been saying. And that's where there is a little bit of an issue there.
And the league decided a couple of weeks ago to strongly encourage distancing and mask wearing at all times on the sidelines, even if players are in the game, but they currently aren't in the game. And it's just hard to get them to do it voluntarily. At some point, it needs to be a mandate. And the league is concerned that that's an area where the virus can spread.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.